Hey, how's it going? It's your friendly neighborhood gatekeeper Dan Frampton here today, and on stream last night, I counted down the top 10 most important punk records to me. Now, if you need your punk lists to have the Ramones, Sex Pistols, and The Clash on it, well, this might not be the list for you, okay? This list isn't about cultural relevance. This list isn't about how many units sold. This list is about albums that meant so much to me during my journey through music. Albums that made me learn how to play guitar, albums that made me want to skateboard. Now, some people would say these are the records that changed my life, but I'm not going to be that dramatic, okay? These records just had a bit of an impact on me, and here we go. We're going to go into my number 10. Now, this record, not really a record I listen to a lot anymore. I can't say it's a bad record, but the band that this band turned into, I'm not really into them anymore. It is going to be The Shape of Punk to Come by Refused. Now, this record, when I first heard it, they've already broken up, you know what I mean? They were already a legend of the past when this record came across my desk as like a 14-year-old boy, you know what I mean? But by the time I heard this record, my first couple listens, actually, I'll tell you, I didn't really vibe with it. It was all over the place. I didn't understand where the techno was coming from. I didn't know why they were using all these noisy things. The screaming was all over the place, you know, all the samples. I just didn't quite get it, I guess, you know? But then, like, the more I listen to it, and the more appreciation I definitely have for it, and also seeing all the bands that got inspired by them. And so let's just like break this down a little bit. Refused weren't necessarily accepted by the hardcore scene when they were doing like their meat and potatoes, kind of like Youth Crew style Swedish hardcore or whatever. And by the time they came to do their tour of America, they knew that they were going to break up. They already had a song called Refused Are Dead. It was going to go on this record. And they went to America. They played their famous last show ever in this basement that the cops came to and tore it all down. And by the time this record came out, they weren't a band anymore, right? But then this record was a slow burn. You know what I mean? It was starting to get played at like 2 and 3 a.m. And that's when I caught them. There was this show called Much Music Loud when I was a kid, okay? And it played on Friday nights at midnight. And when I was like hanging out with the boys, Friday nights at midnight, you know, doing our little party sleepovers or whatever as literal children, we'd be watching Loud and these guys would come on hanging upside down. And yeah, so by the time I turned into like a teenager and I was like, oh yeah, Refused. I remember those guys that like hung upside down or whatever. By the time I rediscovered them in my like actual punk listening to years, oh man, I loved everything about them. All the drumming I thought was so tight and creative. The guitar work, the riffs, the vocals, the lyrics, the anti-establishmentarianism that was going on here. I absolutely fell in love with this record. It made me want to get better at music. It made me realize that like punk and hardcore could be technically proficient and kind of like push the boundaries, you know what I mean? This record did a lot for me as just like a punk listener. It didn't really become like the whole shape of punk to come, but it did kind of start this whole post-hardcore thing that like the early 2000s would turn into. So you gotta really shout them out for that. All those haircuts that they had, everybody started rocking those haircuts. Everybody started rocking the tighter clothes. They didn't want to look like street urchins anymore, you know what I mean? Refused were the band that kind of like cleaned up that presentation and went out there and just did technically proficient, amazing punk rock tunes. So that's why I'm finding this one over here at number 10. Now my number 9 choice is kind of a little bit of the newest band on this list. This record came out last year. This record blew my socks off the moment I heard it. The moment I heard Diaspora Problems by Soul Glow, I was like, I know this is going to be an all-time record. This is going to be one of my favorites forever and ever and ever. And right now it's finding itself at number 9. And the more years that go on, this might trickle its way down the list because this is just such an amazing record. And you want to talk about technical proficiency? You want to talk about lyrical isms, okay? You want to talk about putting songs together and going all over the place from hip-hop and glitch and just like the most hardcore crazy stuff that you could possibly do, throwing in some death metal influence. It's just such a great record over here. But this record here really set the bar really high. There's not going to be really another Soul Glow for a long time. And they're just like one of the coolest, hippest, freshest bands going, and they're making like listening to hardcore feel like a new experience again, okay? If you've been listening to punk rock for a long time, you know about all the different phases of hardcore and post-hardcore and blah, 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 blah. You might think that you've heard it all, okay? You might think that, oh, this band just sounds like another version of this band, and I've heard that before back in the 90s, blah, blah, blah. There is no band on earth ever sounded like Soul Glo. There is no band on earth that have put those elements together in the way that Soul Glo have done it. And they've done it in a way that just like blows me away every time I listen to it, okay? It's a perfect record in my opinion, and I think it might be the only perfect record on this list, which is why it might need to find its way closer to the #1 spot. Every other record imperfections, but it is those imperfections that make them those records, you know what I mean? And make them that important and make you realize, hey, I could be a punk rock musician too, you know? So as far as like being inspirational, maybe this Soul Glo record isn't as inspirational as those other ones. Here's another spoiler. Glow On will not be found on this list. We're gonna be going on to the #8 selection over here. And I was saying that we weren't going to be finding ourselves any Glow On here, but that doesn't mean we're not going to find any Turnstile. Of course, this is going to be the Turnstile record that I'm going to put on here. It's Time and Space, okay? It's not my favorite Turnstile record, okay? And I absolutely do not like Glow On, and because of how little I like Glow On, it makes me go back to the earlier stuff less and less every time I go to listen to music. And this record isn't even my favorite Turnstile record. It just happens to be the most influential and pivotal when it came into my life, okay? So I was going through life. I thought punk and hardcore was a thing of the past for me, you know what I mean? I did the whole thing as a teenager. I booked shows. I played in bands. I was a drummer. I learned all the instruments. I went on tour. I went from town to town, from stage to stage. I did the whole thing, you know? It was a part of my past. It was done and over with. And then I started hearing, oh man, everybody's talking about this Turnstile band, right? So then I check out this record, then I check out the live sets. This is what has been missing from my life since it's been out of my life. What am I doing with my life? So then I brought, the whole punk rock and hardcore thing back into my life in kind of like a peripheral way, because the way my music stuff ended was a little bit personal and a little bit traumatic, so I didn't really want to go like headfirst back into the music scene. So this gave me a kind of way to experience all that stuff, but from the sidelines, you know what I mean? And it made me realize, like, oh, this is just the stuff that I absolutely love. And not only all of that, the songs on this stuff really do slap. The way that they perform these songs live, really, really crazy. And if you like stage diving and slam dancing, this was the band that drove the crowd into an absolute wild frenzy, and it was just documented all over the internet, and I just fell in love every time I watched them, okay? And when Brady, the guitar player, left the band last year, my heart kind of broke because he was such a pivotal member to their sound, okay? They were writing very, very simple rock and roll, riff-heavy songs, and his simple riffs really just made everybody bounce, and his guitar work glued everything together. You know how sometimes like the lead singer or the vocalist glue everything together, or a good drummer helps like Brady was that for this band for me. And ever since then, and ever since the whole Glow On fiasco and the Grammys and all that sort of stuff, they're just not a band I really with anymore, okay? I'm not really super into them, and I don't care what like real hardcore people say to me because of that. I don't care what new Glow On Turnstile people say to me because of that. I know what Turnstile meant to me as a music fan, and I don't need to pretend that I like this new stuff, even though I do not. I like the EP that came out before it. Those were the only good songs on the record that came out. Swig of tea for the working man. I'm just going to do a quick top 3 non-punk, okay? Ween, Bob Dylan, MF Doom. All right, let's move on here. Now we're talking hardcore. We're talking 90s. We're talking early 2000s on this next cut over here, on this next selection. And this next selection kind of was inspired by the straight edge scene, kind of was inspired by the youth crew scene, but did their whole thing with it, okay? They did their own unique thing with it, because this band did the whole overly sentimental Bane thing. Now most Bane fans like the record that came out before this one, but to me, Give Blood is their best record. It has the best chants, it has the best vocal lines, it has the best riffs, it has the best breakdowns, it has the best absolutely everything, okay? And it's just so visceral. When you listen to this record, it takes you into a pit and it just gives you bruises without even getting hit, okay? Most people have this criticism towards Bane that they are overly sentimental. And yes, they are. Almost cartoonishly so, all right? They're all about like brotherhood and staying together and unity and friendship and all that sort of stuff that really just seems like a parody. That really just seems like you can't be genuinely ham-fisting it up that much. But when you check them out live and Aaron Bedard, the singer, does these speeches in between songs, damn, does he mean every word that he's saying? Because he just goes on and on and on, and passionately so, just sweating, making sure everybody knows that this moment is everything, that this scene is everything, that this is all we got. This is so special. Friends, together, family, conversations, you know? That's what these guys are all about. But they're also all about giving blood and giving punches to the face and crowd diving and all that sort of stuff. Every time I think of Bane, I think of back when I was a kid and people wanted to go see Bane so bad, but didn't really have enough money. So they did this whole thing called Pain for Bane. So what they would do is they would take donations of like $5 to $10 to get swift kicked right in the groin area. You know what I mean? Pain for Bane. And the people that were successful at it got money and then got into the show. And the professional wrestlers amongst that crowd were able to work the kicks. So they sold it like they got kicked in the groin. But you know how to do like a low blow wrestling style that doesn't actually do the low blow. Very smart, gotta love it. Very smart. By very smart, I mean don't do that. Clearly, obviously, don't behave in that manner. This is like children that I'm talking about, literal children. And the other thing I think about when I think about Bane is Aaron Bedard swinging the mic around and just clocking people in the face with it. You know what I mean? Just blood everywhere. And I think that's what he meant by give blood. Give your blood to the scene right now. Now, if you're not giving your blood, if you're not giving your sweat, get the frig out of here, okay? This is the hardcore scene. This is about unity. This is about friendship. This is about loyalty, okay? And if you're not here to be loyal to the unified friends, then you can hit the bricks, buddy. I want to see you spilling blood in a pool of sweat and vomit right here, right now, or this doesn't mean anything to you, does it? This can't, you're worthless. Get out of here. You know what I mean? That's the Bane vibe, and I'm absolutely here for it, okay? Just like from the other room, you can feel how gate-kept you are. It's beautiful. I absolutely love it, how it's just like about like unity and togetherness and loyalty, but it's also like, but not for you. It's for us. We're the family. Loyalty to our family. You're clearly not our family. Big fan of everything that Bane does here. Rascal Tough, way too sentimental. Yeah, that's what I love about them. That's exactly what I love about them. All the criticism as to what people don't like about them is true, right? I won't say that they're wrong about those criticisms. I just don't think they're bad things. I like those things a lot, okay? This being a list about the records that mean the most to me during certain times in my life, this really showed me that a hardcore scene could really be that. You know what I mean? It really showed me that these guys were loyal, these guys were unified. And I'm not just talking about the band, I'm talking about the entire culture, you know what I mean? And the way that it went from where they started it, you know what I mean, up in Worcester, Massachusetts, right, all the way up to my tiny little island up in Prince Edward Island, you know what I mean? I was like, wow, man, their message really found a way here, and they're a very small band, so it just showed me the power of what you could do DIY as well, you know? So big ups to these guys. All the other bands I was kind of watching from around or whatever, but Bane was in the scene. Bane was around. You could hang out with Bane, you know? And that's just another reason why I thought it was so cool, because it opened me up to that's what the hardcore scene is, and that's what makes it different than the metal scene. You know, the metal scene is all about playing on a platform 1,000,000 feet tall and kind of creating this distance from the fans or whatever. No, the hardcore scene was the band are also fans. They're also just at the same building you are. You know what I mean? They're enjoying the same things you enjoy. They like the same bands you like. You might as well just have a good time and find a sense of community and togetherness. And this record really did all of that stuff that I'm talking about for me, okay? Now, it might not be the most most perfect hardcore record. It's certainly not for everybody, okay? You can't put this on and please like 98% of people, which is just another reason why I love it so much. You know what I mean? Some hardcore kids don't like it, a bunch of punks don't like it, regular normie folks certainly aren't going to like it. It's just, it scratches a very, very super specific itch that just like I'm always in the mood for whatever reason. I can always pop on Give Blood and be like, this is my stuff. Absolutely 100%. Ollie vs. Fraser, yes, you got it right. I was just about to get into that. That is one of the best chants of all time, okay? That is an all-timer. Give blood, give everything, give blood. It's so simple, and it just gets you hyped. It's just absolutely everything I'm all about. I know you want to know what are my top records, okay? All right, we're going to be moving on. This is going to be the most controversial opinion yet, okay? This is going to be the one where you're like, all right, Dan, you're going to hit us with Bane, and then, are you serious? You talk so much shit about this band on your channel. What are you doing putting this at 10, 9, 8, 7? At number 6, we got Dude Ranch by Blink-182. That's right. Even to this day, this record I could put on and be like, oh, man, these jams. And when Tom's voice comes in, I'm like, that's a great voice. That's like one of the best punk voices I've ever heard. I think of a while ago, we could have had it all. I was so stupid then, you needed time to grow. I'm all about it. I'm all about it 100% as everybody clicks off as I do my Tom impression. But man, this record, bop after bop, so funny, so tight, such a good little album. And this record is pre-Travis, thank God. So at least Travis doesn't end up on my list. But this record made me realize that you could just be a silly boy. That you could just get a guitar and learn a couple chords and just be a silly Billy. You didn't need to be a serious guy. You didn't need to be a particularly talented guy. All you needed was a couple friends, get them together, learn a couple chords, and just goof around, okay? It was this Blink-182 record and another Green Day record that isn't on this list. It was Insomniac that made me kind of go, all right, okay, all right, I can play music. And yeah, the songs on this, even to this day, I think are so catchy and are so fun. And the way that, like, they got signed to this major record label, and the major record label didn't even check in on them, right? They're just like, all right, Blink-182, you go do your thing, okay? And which is so weird because they're a new band. You'd think that a label would be like, okay, what are these guys doing? But the money was crazy in the 90s, dude, before like the internet or whatever. Like, music labels had money to throw around. They were developing artists with money to burn, you know what I mean? And that's not a thing anymore. So they just like scooped up this band because whatever, they're popular, they might make a couple dollars off them, whatever. But because they didn't check in on them, they were able to create like an absolute classic, just an absolute legendary record in my opinion. And even though Enema of the State, the record that came out after this, blew them up into like superstardom proportions or whatever, it's this record that really you can feel these young, snotty-nosed suburbanites with a record deal and how lucky they felt to do it. And just like this cleaned up shitty-ass punk rock music was just what like a 13-year-old me was all about. Okay, we're going down to number 5. Now we're kind of in that like late 90s, 2000 era for me as a human being, and I'm needing some punk rock tunes, okay? Punk rock has taken over my whole like listening diet, and when I heard this record here, which was actually my first Rancid record before I went back to And Out Come the Wolves and discovered everything that they did prior, the first Rancid record I actually listened to, which is still my favorite Rancid record today, is Rancid 2000. Now, this isn't like a ranking of albums that are the most influential. This isn't a ranking of albums that have like the most historical or cultural significance, okay? If you're just joining us, this is a ranking of albums that meant the most to me. Albums that pointed me in certain directions. Albums that made me like either start skateboarding or started making me like pick up a guitar or a set of drums. Something that inspired me to do something. You know, records that other people would otherwise say changed their life. But like I said earlier, I'm not going to be that dramatic. These are the records that just had like the biggest impact on me. And this record here, Rancid 2000, came out right as soon as I was learning how to play the drums for the first time. And every song on this thing, like I said, is just an assault on the senses. And somehow, every track manages to be a little bit different than the last one. Everyone brings a different thing to the table. It is unbelievable how they were able to put such a thing together with such like small bite-sized songs that came together in such a really big, cohesive way. They really knocked it out of the park over here with Rancid 2000, and it might actually be their last great record. And that's okay if that's the case, because their first 5 records are kind of untouchable, but this one to me is my favorite one. We're going to be coming in at number 4. Number 4 with a bullet. We're talking about NoFX. I think everybody was expecting NoFX on this list for me, or maybe not. Coming in at number 3 on the top 10 list. Here it is. It's Milo Goes to College by the Descendants. What an awesome record this thing is, okay? This thing is one of the best records I've ever heard, and one of the most influential records. It came out in like the whole hardcore scene when everybody was trying to be as hardcore as possible, and here they came, the Descendants, singing like sugary sweet melodies, you know, with a nerd as a front person or whatever. Everybody didn't know what to make of these guys at first, a big deal or whatever, and now that they're back again in like the 2020s, they're playing the hits, you know what I mean? They're out there doing their thing. And not every one of their best songs is on this record. There are some great songs that came out in the 90s by the Descendants, but this record just has like all the iconic tracks. This record is the record that inspired all the things that inspired me. You know what I mean? If you trickle down that like, I don't know, the trickle down of inspirations or whatever, it all leads back. All roads lead to the Descendants. To the number 2 record here, Minor Threat. Now this record over here isn't really a record, okay? This is kind of stretching it. This is called The First 2 7-inches because it is a compilation of the first 2 7-inches. But these 2 7-inches together, compiled, sound like one cohesive experience and is experienced as one cohesive experience more often than not. And it's just possibly the best record ever made, okay? But I have it here at number 2, so we do have one record that is a little bit better than this one. Now this record was the record that made me also see moshing and going crazy and hanging from like the roofs and screaming about something that you're passionate about in a scene of other people that don't necessarily see that as a thing. That's what made me see this in a way that like made me really like drawn to it. And also like just do the things yourself, okay? Because they were a band doing their own thing, so they had to create their own shows. So this whole DIY thing that they did is the thing that inspired me the most. Now most straight edge people, I'm not one of them, you know what I mean? They look back to Minor Threat as kind of like the beginning point of straight edge or whatever, but that's not what resonates strongly with me. The biggest message that I got from Ian MacKaye and gang over here is do it yourself, stay true to yourself, do what you believe in, and you know, that's it. You don't need anything else than that. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, doesn't matter what anybody else does, just do your own thing and, you know, just hang your hat on that. And yeah, so everybody that came out after that in the DIY scene kind of like do their interpretation of the teachings of Ian MacKaye, okay? He might be the kind of like Jesus Christ figure of DIY, but he did everything at the most extreme. Like he wouldn't even be in Rolling Stone because there was advertisements for alcohol in it, and he didn't want to be associated with advertisements for alcohol, so he kept Minor Threat and he kept Fugazi away from those publications. Okay, number 1, Shed by Title Fight. My most important, my most favorite, my most awesome record to ever exist ever is Shed by Title Fight. This is their first official LP release, okay? This record here is just unbelievable. This might be the best music I've ever heard in my life. Every time I pop this on, I'm just like, this is just the best song ever. And then it gets to the next song, like, this is just the best band ever. And it's like, oh my God, the next song happens, and you're like, this is just the best record ever. And every time I listen to this, I have the same response, okay? I love the way that these guys like put everything together. It's just so fast and catchy and fun. and it's just like the most charismatic stuff ever, and very relatable, and it's not like too cool, and it's not like too punk, and it's not like anything like that. It's very inclusive. It makes you want to come in and listen to the band and throw yourself around. You know what I mean? It's just a wonderful time. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you're cool as hell. Join the channel if you want to come in and join some live chat sometime. It's a wonderful time. Until my next upload, watch another upload.